Welcome everybody, it's Rev. We are going to be talking about the revolutionary new bird pile. If you like my videos, please subscribe. If you don't like my videos, you can unsubscribe. That's how it would be. But this is Marcus Law's list that I believe he brought to the most recent RBET. So this is kind of like what we're going to work off of. I had been working on something like this, which albeit looked very, very different than this the last few months, and got some of his takes on this list, and some edits he made, and then also some other players that wanted to experiment with this. The idea with the bird pile deck is you play basically every single broken card in the format that doesn't like blatantly conflict with itself. Um, so like obviously like Substitute's a very broken card. You'd never be able to fit it in a deck like this. You know, Future Fusion's a very broken card. You'd never be able to fit it in a deck like this. But broken cards being you know, parts of the Blackwing engine, um, Grepher, Dark Armed, which is even made better by Grepher, Burial, BrainCon, Black Whirlwind, Rhoda, Icarus is very good removal, Deck Dev, and Return, and of course like the stuff everyone runs, like Shoot, Heavy. Um, so this was his template for the deck. I have a bunch of different versions of this, and I don't really know which one is the best. But I just wanted to present some of them to you and get your opinion on some deck building stuff, because the problem that I keep running into is I feel like this deck like would feel so perfect at like 43-ish cards, but I'm not fucking running 43 cards because I'm not an idiot. So like there's just so many like different parts of the engine that I can't necessarily figure out what's best. And there's another issue with the deck that I found is that siding becomes a lot harder because like post side, like usually one engine or the other is better. Like the Blackwing engine is better versus like certain matchups than like the Grepher discard engine, and then like vice versa. So like you have to sub sometimes half of it out, and then like post side you are left with sort of a half-ass like version of one of the decks. So that's something I'm working on. So a lot of the flexibility with siding has to come from the um, spell and trap lineup, I think. And I think that maybe that means that when building the side deck, which I haven't quite figured out, um, you're gonna need like less monsters in the side deck and like maybe lighter siding patterns with like a lot more one-ofs with the spell and trap lineup. But um, I'll go through like some of the stuff that I like worked on. So like the first iteration of this deck was this. So as you can see, I cut out the utilities for Grepher. Um, So that being like Necrogarda and Plague Spreader Zombie. I don't know if that's correct or not. That was a space issue. But my reasoning was I would just replace them with like basically these two birds, so two Kalut, and like the second Blizzard as well, because they make your Icarus better and your deck dev better. Um, the big argument like for the utility package is that Necro does allow you to protect your Dark Grepher, but like in Marcus's version, he's only running one Dimpriz, which I don't really agree with, and he wasn't maining Mystical Space Typhoon, which to me I just definitely don't agree with. Um, so I tried this out. It actually performed pretty darn well. The big issue for me was there was a lot less flexibility on um, like Grepher setups and like the ceiling that you have with Return. Just because Plague just it allows you to enable like or it enables you to do like a lot of like different stuff. Like the very common like bring out like a Vayu armed wing and then sync with Plague, and then like use the second Vayu Engrave, and then you have an Armor Master plus like a level 8 Synchro, usually like something like a Stardust to protect yourself. And I don't like cutting that off. The other thing which I think is worth noting is Blizzard's really bad in your opener, and this deck just by its nature does run less Blizzard targets. So that kind of sucks. A lot of people have been saying you don't want to open Kalut. I'm not sure I agree with that, just because like I mean, if you summon like any Blackwing and you have a Kalut in hand, like that to me is pretty good, and it makes your whirlwinds better, and it enables deck dev. So I haven't really settled on Kalut, but I made a few changes, namely getting Mindcon out of the main, which I think I just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and Raikou to the side, which in future builds I moved to the main. So the sides, the side. I mean, I've just been experimenting with stuff, but like DD Warrior Lady, I think could get cut. You could probably cut a third Dust Tornado. The rest is not negotiable. So I won't save this, but like from my playtesting, like the side's largely solved. Like you can't really do much more or less than this. Um, like yeah, you just can't. Like there's none of these cards you can cut. Um, so I'll go to the second version of the deck I built. The other thing that I've kind of missed at times is Armory Arm, but I can't figure out what I'd like to cut for that. Probably the first thing on the chopping block would be Android. Um, you need, of course, Chimera Tech. This, like all of these are basically 100% mandatory. The only thing, especially if you're on only one Kalut, is you're going to be making androids a lot less frequently. And if you start adding Raikos to the main, you're going to be making Armory Arms more frequently with the Plague, which does come back in some other versions of the deck I've been testing out. So here's another version of the deck. And I'll tell you what I was kind of optimizing for this one, which is just your opening hand. So I moved a deck dev to the side, just because deck dev can be good in your opener, but it can also be dead. And then I opted to do 3 Greffers as opposed to an Arma, which again I'm not really entirely sure on just yet because of just opening hand math. I mean, like pretty much any opening hand Greffer's almost always going to be better, especially with the lack of Caius in this deck. So again, electing to trim the utility package of Necro and Plague Spreader, which I kind of do miss, and elected to have a Gorse. And really, the theory behind this was just like optimizing solely on what your opening hand looked like. And the opening hands with this do look pretty good. I mean, you just have a lot of really broken openers. You have Greffer plus conversion a lot of the time. You have the ability to open with just a Raikou, which is a nice starter that Black Wings lack. You have the ability to play it slow if you open a Gorse. You have actual traps as opposed to like too many Icarus in deck devs. So you have like, of course, the Mirror Force, Torrential, and then Dimpriz Bottomless, which I guess if you're playing a deck like this, I'd say is kind of like table stakes. Like if you don't draw well in the opening hand, you kind of have to have at least this many traps, in my opinion. Um, this many real traps. So that was the second version of the deck, and then the final version of the deck that I've been testing with is this, which is very similar to Marcus's, since it adds back the Plague and the Necro. More or less, it just makes sure that MST is in the main, which I find to be non-negotiable. It makes the Rota better because you can Rota for Necro and like pitch it with a Brio or pitch it with a Greffer, and it brings in 2 Raikos to give you an additional starter. So it's kind of like millish, mill-ish. And I tried charging this, but what we're going to kind of get into is like what some of the issues that I've been running into when building the deck, and why it's like I just wish like I could like have 43 cards without running 43 cards, if you know what I mean. So this is what it looks like. And flex spots that I've really been considering, that otherwise, oh wait, I think torrential was supposed to be here somewhere. Um, definitely was supposed to be here somewhere. But like flex spots that like I wish I could fit in the deck are like this basically. Like Arma's on the table. I would never main Mindcon, frankly. What's the other one? Like the second Kalut, I think is worth considering. Blizzard gets even better when you run Raikos. Um, so like you kind of get into this situation where like, oh yeah, if I add Raikos, then I definitely want to add like more. like Blizzard and Kalute stuff because that makes your Raikos better and it also makes your Icarus better. But then you start like actually cutting other good like engine cards, so it really puts you in a tough spot. Like, and the thing I don't want to happen is like start like cutting Greffers. Like I'd like say all of these cards are of course non-negotiable. Two Greffers are non-negotiable. One Greffer maybe could get cut. It's just such a good starter, especially if you're running like a suite of so many good discards, like the three Sirocco, three Vayu, and two utilities, that being Necro and Plague. You can't. So like you could cut a Greffer to find space for this, but I just don't think it's great. Um, you can't really cut three Shura just because that's like kind of the reason you're running Whirlwind anyway. You want Bora as utility, you want at least one Kalute as utility, you want one Blizzard as utility. Then you're like, oh, I guess I could cut a Raikou. But then you look back and it's like if I'm cutting a Raikou to add like a Blizzard and a Kalute, then like cutting the Raikou makes these worse anyway. So it's like it kind of like backs you into a corner like with deck size here. Allure's non-negotiable. All of these are non-negotiable. I would never cut MST. Mirror, Return, Solemn, Shoot, two Icarus. You're like, oh, maybe you could flex out an Icarus like if you're just like running like Blizzard and Kalute. But then it's like that sometimes it makes it really hard to get out of the early game. Um, and then you like look at the other cards, like maybe I could flex out a Dimpriz, but I don't really think that's worth it in this meta. Like, what are you cutting a Dimpriz for? Um, so like you just get put in these like weird spots. Like another card is like Gores, which is really hit or miss. But like if I could fit all of these cards in here, that would be nice. I'm just having a lot of trouble on like finding what the correct 40 is. And the big question on my mind is whether or not Plague and Necro are worth it, because they just increase your ceiling and gameplay flexibility so much, but they are just kind of shitty bricks, and they do require you to run like probably at least one Raikou, which is really good in this deck, by the way, because it solves um, some issues that you have post side with like Consecrated Light and Decrees. So it's very helpful to have these available. Um, but like then if you go like, oh, I'm gonna cut the Raikos, then it's like, well, if I'm cutting the Raikos, like, are these as good? And then you start like calling into question like your Greffers, and like then it just like becomes a whole different deck. So like I don't know, it's just kind of hard to figure out like what the optimal lineup is. Like cutting Kalute always kind of feels bad. Blizzard's really broken, but at the same time it's just really bad in your opener. I'd love to be playing two deck devs, but is there really room for it? I like Armageddonite as like just a decent starter, but it's really not that great without Caius backing it up. Um, so yeah, these are just some of my thoughts on the deck. Like I haven't figured out what the optimal combination is yet, but let me know what you guys think in the comments on the bird pile, whether or not really these two cards are worth it, Plague and Necro. And then also if it's worth like more of a bird heavy like hybrid thing that just has like additional ceiling with Burial and Return, or like you do need the utilities, just because I can't really figure out at this point what's best. Like a build that's just like bird heavier and makes a little bit worse use of Greffer, Burial, and Return, or something that's less bird heavy and makes better use of Greffer, Arma, stuff like that. Let me know in the comments. Those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching.